He drives strategy and growth for the region that generates more than half of all global business for Airbnb as it evolves from roots in home sharing into all integrated end-to-end travel platform moving toward a highly anticipated IPO. He's also worked out, we may get to later, a great routine to fight jet lag. Please welcome to the stage Airbnb's Managing Director for Europe, the Middle East and Africa, Jeroen. Welcome, Jeroen.
Thank you.
Take a seat.
Thank you.
So in the description for this session, it says that you've redefined hospitality. Give us, just to kick us off, how do you define hospitality yourself?
I think the obvious answer of hospitality would probably be a combination of welcoming and friendly, and I think Airbnb wants to take that to the next level. As you know, our mission is belong anywhere, so we really want people, no matter where they are and where they travel to feel like they belong at home. And in the last 11 years, the company is 11 years old right now. I think we've made a lot of headwinds. We went from pure home sharing with the three airbeds that were inflated to where we are now. So a lot of things have happened. But it's still very much about local, authentic, and people-powered experiences. So that, for us, is the type of hospitality company we want to be.
Okay, so it started out, as you said, it's the three airbeds, and it's generally seen, the host model is still seen as the core proposition for what you do. Is that starting to become something else, the core proposition of what Airbnb is?
I think the company has evolved, just like our community has evolved. And we started tailoring a product very much towards the millennial community, and the millennial community starts to evolve, right? So we want to evolve with them. We're starting to see that our very first initial guests started to have families, have jobs now, and we want to make sure that we tailor our product towards that so that we grow with them. And that's a little bit what we've done. We've started with home sharing. I think from home sharing we became an overall accommodation platform, and now we are on our road to become an end-to-end travel platform.
Okay. Now at Phocuswright, we labelled you one of our newsmakers not you personally, that would have been very flattering, but Airbnb, one of our newsmakers of the year for 2018, just by virtue of all the different things that you were doing. Mm-hmm. And this year, you're already on the road to perhaps being one of our kind of newsmakers for 2019. There's been a couple of interesting things. We'll get to some of the hires maybe later, but HotelTonight was an acquisition. Mm-hmm. Just give us it may have surprised some people, may not have surprised some people. Just give us the rationale for why that deal happened.
Look, hotels have always been present on our platform. I think it's a market that is starting to consolidate, and we want to make sure, and that's where we saw the opportunity, that for some of the independent hotels, we are actually presenting an alternative to look for a distribution alternative to differentiate some of their challenges. And that's really what we ended up with doing there. So since we want to tailor part of our offering towards hotels, doing it internally for us would have been very challenging. It would have cost us a lot of time. That's where a company like HotelTonight, who has the people skills, who has the technology, who has the tools, who has the API connections and to the channel managers and so on, really allowed us to move a lot faster into that direction. But it's a natural route, and that's what we're going to continue to do.
Do you plan to integrate HotelTonight into the content from HotelTonight into Airbnb?
Yeah, we will, and we already have boutique hotels. We've identified it as one of the categories that we want to grow in. Part of that inventory of HotelTonight will become available on Airbnb platform. There's going to be a filter in between of what type of inventory we want and what type of inventory doesn't really belong on Airbnb. One of the things that we are looking for example, are we want to tailor towards the independent hotels, right? So I think for the more chain hotels, they don't really have the necessity to publish and list and show their inventory on Airbnb. They already have a strong brand, a lot of direct traffic, so there's little added value that we can bring. For the more independent, the smaller boutique hotels, I think they offer personalized hospitality. There's a lot of community spaces. There's that personal connections with recommendations that are of what to do in the evening and over lunch and so on. And those are really the ones that we want to tailor towards.
Okay, and because HotelTonight did start out as a Hotel Tonight, like the clue is in the name, and then it went to a week, and then it went out to becoming a normal OTA. I mean, is that something that you want to get it back to it being the kind of distressed inventory?
I think there's a
immediacy?
huge opportunity for, especially for last-minute bookers, and that's where we see a lot of the hotels that get booked on Airbnb are within 72 hours from the arrival date. So there's a huge opportunity. We want to continue to use it in that way. But also there's a lot more broader. If people have a very short trip where they're arriving in the evening, leaving early in the morning, they might be looking for an experience that is provided by HotelTonight or any other boutique hotelier.
Okay, so I mean, you made the acquisition, but a year ago you announced that you would officially allow hotels. I mean, talk to us a little bit about how that element is going. You started off by partnering with SiteMinder, and that was a big deal in some respects. Not the deal itself, but it was a big deal for the industry.
It was a little bit of an outcoming for us. Again, right, for us internally, we've always had hotels independently list, and the fact that we were very open about it and starting to proactively integrate via some of the channel managers, SiteMinder, VeilPro, and so on, was a big step for us. It allowed us to really make sure that we have the right tool set for this type of our community, and we want to continue to develop that. So HotelTonight, the way I see it, they bring the people skills, the tool set, and the technology in order to be able to tailor exactly that. So,
is that going to be the primary way then of getting hotels, or are you going to do it through switches as well?
So HotelTonight, when you say switches, what do you mean? Like some of the
with more SiteMinders and stuff like
that?
that?
They already have most of those connections. We want to make sure that we leverage those.
Okay. Another coming out step up for the company was when the CEO Brian Chesky told my colleague when she interviewed him this time last year. He said, our enemy now. He didn't say was hotels before, but that was always the perception, was that the enemy was the hotels. But our enemy now are Booking.com and Expedia, the OTAs.
I think, honestly...
Do you not see them as the enemy?
So a couple of things. First of all, we're not obsessed with any individual company, and neither we were at the time with hotels. I think there's a lot of synergies, and both are completely different experiences. We've always said that, and I think we will continue to honor that. And then we need to look at our internal strengths, right? So it's overall an industry that represents a little bit over 10% of the global GDP. It's growing at 4% year on year. So there's a huge opportunity there for everybody, and everybody will find their place. What I think we need to focus on, and what we have exclusively going for us, is we have the majority of our inventory is still unique to Airbnb. And in a marketplace, unique inventory usually means that you attract a certain type of customer, and that the customer acquisition is usually cheaper. We have a tremendous strong brand. Our brand, it's both a verb and a noun. It's used in TV series and in movies and songs. And if there was a recent study from in the UK where they asked the millennial population about what kind of brands have you talked about in the last months, and 70% mentioned Airbnb. So if you then take into account that 60% of the people that come to Airbnb come and do so based upon the word of mouth and based upon the experience that somebody has talked to them about it, there's a huge flywheel that starts to go there. I think the third one that is unique to Airbnb is just the fact that we have our payment systems. All the payments are handled via the platform. We have our insurance policies for guests and hosts, the guarantees that we offer, and so on. So I think if you put all of these three things together, I think we're quite a unique in the overall industry.
But you are competing against them now because you're making a concerted effort to become a platform just like them, would you say?
Yeah, but everybody is tailoring towards their strengths, right? I think we need to look at what the others are doing, but we need to continue to work towards what we think the industry is going towards and what our mission is, which is belong anywhere.
What do you think Booking.com does well then?
I think you'll need to ask them what they
No, but what do you think?
I think they have a tremendous amount of variety, and they're a very efficient company. I think we have a very strong brand and a different business model.
Okay, so one of the other newsmaker type things that's happened this year is well, it actually happened last year, but it was eventually disclosed this year. You invested in Oyo. Again, what was the rationale behind that one? Perhaps another kind of left field move, perhaps?
Yeah, so Oyo is an incredibly powerful company, especially in Asia. Started in India, has grown to become, I think, the biggest hospitality brand at the moment from an accommodation point of view in China, trying to replicate the same thing in Indonesia. So an incredible, powerful opportunity. I think we have a lot of synergies with the company, and that's why we decided to invest in them.
But you've invested in them, but they've just acquired a company that you compete with in Europe.
I don't think we compete with them necessarily. Yeah. I think, again, there's a lot of synergies where some of the inventory is actually present on our platform.
Okay. And you hired Fred Reid as your head of transportation. And, a classic political interviewer's question is, you've had your first 100 days in office. It's actually 97, I checked a little while ago.
Wow.
So Fred has been around for 97 days. I know it's your department, but just give us a sense of what Fred is supposed to be doing for you.
So Fred, it's not just about flights, even though that's where he has his background. We've seen that one of the biggest pain points when we travel, whether it's for leisure or for business, is still the overall transportation. And Fred wants to help us to reinvent that. So it's, I think, one of the things that Airbnb is very powerful at is reinventing things and starting to look at a complete industry with a white sheet of paper and then saying, based upon the technology that's available and based upon the customer preferences, how can we rethink that again? And that's a little bit the job that Fred has at this moment in time. It's not just about flights, it's overall transportation prior to your check-in on your Airbnb or also post.
What do you think needs reinventing about transportation? What's wrong? What needs fixing?
I'll let him explain. He definitely has the better perspective. It's not my area, as you mentioned at the beginning. But I acknowledge I had an hour delay when I arrived today, so I acknowledge it's one of the pain points. I'm not sure what the solution is, but it is a pain point.
So Airbnb taking over Homeland Security or something?
That was not necessarily the reason why there was the delay.
That would be one hell of a task, even for someone like Fred Reid. So. Experiences is something that's been kind of bubbling along. Give us your sense of the uptake of that. I mean, we've got a session later about tours and activities. I mean, you're in that space as well as flights, not flights, as it were. Yeah.
So experiences for us, we've launched it fairly small with, I think, about 500 experiences in 12 markets in end of 2016. At the moment, we have in about 1,000 markets, we have over 30,000 experiences. So we've evolved and we try to find what exactly is working, what is sticking, what is not. And what we've seen is that the iconic kind of experiences, but with a twist, with somebody who provides you access, who provides you a local insight, is what really does it. So we want to make sure that the overall end-to-end trip, which is what Airbnb tries to do, that one of the layers that we put on top of that is the experience layer. And there's actually a lot of synergies between our accommodation business and our experience business.
Just lastly on the experiences part, is it the uniqueness of those experiences that you're going to focus on, or will there come a point where you just have to go for some of the more high volume things like a trip to the Heineken Museum or something like that?
So I don't think there's a lot of, again, added value that we can bring to selling tickets for the Heineken Museum unless there's a specific twist that we can bring to it, right? With the former brewer, I'm not sure. So we want to make sure is that we focus our interests and the efforts of where we think that we can have an impact and in differentiation. At the moment, it's still that people-powered aspect that we want to focus on.
Okay. Maybe it was led by the likes of us in the media, but there was a fair amount of fuss a couple of weeks ago with Marriott kind of getting in on the act. What's your kind of view on hotel chains? I mean, it's not a new thing, right. But Marriott is the latest in a line of chains that have kind of going for your market, arguably?
Yeah. So, well, we'll see if they go after our market, but I think it's a welcoming event. I'm not surprised by it because we've seen them slowly stepping into that direction for a couple of years right now. I think it's actually it's just a proof point that 6-7 years ago when we started to talk about home sharing, that everybody's looking and frowning at saying, really, that's what you want to do? And now it's just a token of that there is really a market and that it's not just for the backpack traveler, but it's also for the more business traveler and the more upscale traveler who are looking for a different type of experience. So welcome them into the party.
I'm glad you referenced the business market there. I mean, what aspirations do you have from a share of Airbnb's business travel could eventually make? I mean, what is it now, and what do you think it could be?
So for us, our business travelers account for about 15% of all the
15.
15, yes. We want to continue to grow that. The growth rates that we're seeing at the moment is about 3x. So 3x is what we did last year. So fairly good growth rates. What we have seen is that at the moment, just to put a couple of numbers in perspective, we've had about 400,000 companies sign up for a corporate account with Airbnb. So it's a fairly significant amount. And I think the unique point is that most of the companies are not looking for cost efficiency. Most of the companies that are working with us do so because their employees are actually asking for that kind of an experience. They already do it for their leisure. They're used to it. They, especially for some of their longer stays, they get accustomed to having a little bit more space, and they ask, is there an easier way for me to reimburse my expenses? And that's where we come in. So it's definitely a big growth opportunity for us.
Okay. You're a large company now. You've in lots of markets all around the world, but it would be wrong if you weren't scared of something. Well, what scares Airbnb about now and in the future? You must be worried about something as an organization. Is it competition? What is it?
So I don't think with all the growth that we've seen, I think we're quite a consolidated company right now. We have a healthy balance sheet. We have healthy growth numbers. We have a diversified offering and so on. I don't think there's a specific point that we are scared about. We have a lot of focus areas, both internally as well as externally, that we want to continue to develop. So I'm not sure that there's one specific point that we would be specifically worried about going forward.
Okay, I mean, the theme of this year's conference is empires on the edge. And for a long time, you were the young upstart, and the other empires were arguably on the edge of being challenged. But you are an empire in your own right. I mean, do you have a weak point? Do you think?
Do we have a weak point? I would have to come back to that on what exactly. So definitely there's challenges. The growth that we've seen just in 11 years from going to 3 guests on the airbeds to having over 500 million guests checked in brings challenges with them. So that overall growth rate in terms of how you communicate, how you make decisions and so on is something that we're working through. But again, we have a very healthy growth rate, a healthy balance sheet, diversified offering. So I have a hard time mentioning one specific.
So there could be many.
One.
There could be many.
There could be. I'm sure there's things that we don't do very well and that we have an improvement that we can improve on.
Okay.
Sure
I referenced it in your introduction. I know people from Airbnb are always keen to talk about this, so we have to assume you want to talk about the IPO. No? Okay,
There's
that's fine.
not really a lot of news on the IPO
No,
side.
it's fine. People would always expect me to ask. And lastly, our colleague Douglas rather jokingly referenced your former head of Europe before. I mean, Olivier, who's here tomorrow, lastly, do you think he's doing a good job what he's doing over at Booking.com, given that they're now the competition, in the words of the CEO?
So knowing Olivier, he'll do a good job. I've lost a little bit of track of what he has been doing lately. Ask him tomorrow.
Okay, we will do. Thank you very much. Show your appreciation for Jeroen Meijers. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.